Shortly after John Kennedy's assassination, Jackie Kennedy wrote to Nikita Khrushchev saying that he and her husband, quote, were allied in a determination that the world should not be blown up. The danger which troubled my husband was that war might be started not so much by the big men as by the little ones. While big men know the need for self-control and restraint, little men are sometimes moved more by fear and pride. Donald Trump is just such a little man and should never again be in control of America's nuclear arsenal. We're lucky to have survived his first presidency and can't risk that our luck will endure through his second one. If there is any position that requires rational judgment, sober circumspection, wisdom, knowledge, restraint, understanding of adversaries, careful deliberation, and empathy, it's the presidency of the United States, a position that makes its occupant one of the two people in the world who have veto power over the future existence of life on this planet. Donald Trump may be the most egregiously unfit person to have that responsibility, but that's a power that no one should have. In April 1946, Lewis Mumford published an article in Saturday Review titled, "Gentlemen, You Are Mad," which began, "We in America are living among madmen. Madmen govern our affairs in the name of order and security. The chief madmen claim the titles of general, admiral, senator, scientist, administrator, secretary of state, even president. And the fatal symptom of their madness is this: they have been carrying through a series of acts which will lead eventually to the destruction of mankind under the solemn conviction that they are normal, responsible people living sane lives and working for reasonable ends. That madness has not abated. It is madness that almost 80 years after the atomic destruction of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, we still have more than 12,000 nuclear bombs in the world. It is madness that today the world is again on the brink of nuclear war. It is madness that no one stands between the President of the United States and authorization to launch America's nuclear arsenal. It is madness that, according to an August 20th New York Times article by David Sanger, U.S. policy now envisions fighting and winning a simultaneous three-front nuclear war against Russia, China, and North Korea. It is madness that, according to the August 20th Bulletin of Atomic Scientists and other reliable sources, there are nuclear strategists who believe the U.S. can launch a preemptive nuclear attack against our adversaries to which they would be unable to respond. And it would be absolute madness to ever let Donald Trump regain access to those nuclear codes, where, while nobody should ever have that power, that threat would be exponentially more dangerous in the hands of Donald Trump, a shallow, rash, impulsive, misanthropic, pathological narcissist. As even Hillary Clinton said during the 2016 campaign, a man who can be provoked by a tweet should not be anywhere near the nuclear codes. Trump revealed his unfitness even before assuming the presidency in 2017. He asked, what was the point of having nuclear weapons if we can't use them? To most people, that would mean we should get rid of nuclear weapons. To Trump, it meant we should make them more usable. One frightening, though revealing moment came in Evansville, Illinois, when former basketball coach and Indiana icon Bobby Knight, in endorsing Trump, said, we got to talk about this presidential crap here just for a minute. I'll tell you who they said wasn't presidential, and that guy, Harry Truman. And Truman, with what he did in dropping and having the guts to drop the bomb in 1944, only a year off, saved millions of American lives. And that's what Harry Truman did, and he became one of the three great presidents of the United States. And here's a man who would do the same thing because he's going to become one of the four great presidents of the United States. Trump stood next to Bobby Knight, smiling and nodding in agreement, and said, such a great guy. Wow, how do you top that? You should be very proud of him here in Indiana. This is a national treasure, okay? During his presidency, Trump had advisors who restrained him, at least until he fired them. We won't be so lucky the next time around. Among them was Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. when Trump bemoaned the decline in the U.S. nuclear arsenal and called for a tenfold increase during a July 20th meeting, Tillerson called him a fucking moron. In February 2017, in Trump's first phone call with Putin, Putin proposed extending the New START treaty beyond the 2021 expiration date. Trump paused the conversation and asked his aides what that treaty was. When they told him, he strongly criticized it and rejected its extension, calling it a one-sided deal like all the other deals, a bad one-sided treaty, even though it was supported by all the Joint Chiefs of Staff, by 7 four-star admirals and generals who had controlled all U.S. nuclear strategic forces. He not only failed to renew the New START treaty, he abrogated the Open Skies Treaty and the INF Treaty, which U.S. Ambassador to Russia, John Huntsman, said was probably the most successful treaty in the history of arms control. Trump also reviled the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal that Iran had negotiated with the U.S., Russia, China, Germany, Britain, and France. As a result of that deal, Iran mothballed almost all of its centrifuges, disabled its plutonium-producing heavy water reactor at Iraq, shipped 98% of its enriched uranium out of the country, capped uranium enrichment levels at 3.67%, far below the 90% needed for weapons grade. And according to the IAEA, Iran fully complied with that deal. Well, Trump pulled us out of that. And now, as a result, Iran has rebuilt its nuclear program. It now enriches up to 60% and is within, we say, probably less than a month of actually developing a nuclear bomb. Thank you, Trump. In 2017, he almost provoked a war with North Korea, which would certainly have become a nuclear war. He called North Korea leader Kim Jong-un a 28-year-old whack job and a maniac. He warned of fire and fury like the world has never seen, and used his first UN General Assembly speech to declare that Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime. It got so dangerous that former CIA Director John Brennan put the odds of war at 20 to 25%, but Council on Foreign Relations President Richard Haass thought the chances were 50-50. Republican Senator Bob Corker feared that Trump's bellicosity had put the U.S. on the path to World War III. Corker, the chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, said, "It's a shame the White House has become an adult daycare center." So war was averted, not because of Trump, but because of South Korean President Moon's diplomacy. On February 2nd, 2018, Trump released the Pentagon's new nuclear posture review, the first one since Obama's 2010 posture review. Whereas Obama's review had reduced the role of nuclear weapons in the U.S. defense posture, the 2018 review elevated that role and proposed active measures to counter new threats. So it lowered the threshold for the use of nuclear weapons. And that review was conducted by none other than Keith Payne. Payne, who had said in 1980 that the U.S. should be ready to fight a nuclear war and win it against the Soviet Union, he said, well, we'll lose 20 million people, but it's worth it to defeat the Soviet Union. A senior nuclear analyst told the American Conservative, the story you won't hear is how this really came about. And here's how it happened. One day, Sean Hannity got on television and talked about how we need more nuclear weapons. And Donald Trump heard this and went over to the Pentagon, and presto, we got Keith Payne in charge of this new nuclear posture review. And that's the truth, and that's what got us where we are. So Trump believed that South Korea, Japan, and Saudi Arabia should all develop their own nuclear weapons, partly because it would save the United States a lot of money. And if that's not enough, look at Project 2025, which explicitly lays out the strategy for not only dramatically increasing the U.S. nuclear arsenal, but also lowering the threshold for their use and for introducing new nuclear weapons. So it's not surprising that a bipartisan group just this week, of 741 former national security officials endorsed Kamala Harris and decried Trump's vengeful impulsiveness. 4 days earlier, more than 100 former Republican national security officials came to a similar conclusion, following on the heels of 230 former Republican staffers. So given the current state of affairs, well, we may not survive in any case, but a second presidency by Donald Trump would be far too dangerous to even contemplate. Thanks.